The Nissan Patrol is considered one of Australia's best four-wheel drives. With a factory bulletproof driveline, they've proven themselves as an exceptional off-road vehicle. So why is it there's so much trepidation when the 3-litre Nissan ZD30 is mentioned? It doesn't matter if you're talking to a hardcore Toyota enthusiast or a Nissan Patrol owner, it's generally accepted that the body and driveline of the Patrols are rock solid, but the engine, the ZD30 in particular, is the weak point. I've owned several Nissan Patrols over the years, including the RD28, the ZD30 and the popular TD42, but I wanted to share with you what to look for if you're buying a Patrol with a ZD30 motor and what preventative things you can do to fix some of the common issues. The GU Patrol hit the market in '97 sporting the 6-cylinder RD28 motor. It's generally accepted as a decent motor in most respects, but the 2.8 litre turbo seems a little underpowered. Drivability wise, the engine feels strong and it's a good rever, but it's almost as if they got the ratios wrong, as it could have longer legs. This can be alleviated by 33-inch or larger tyres, but the 99 kilowatt motor still lacks in the power figures, particularly since a lot of people use Patrols to tow camper trailers, caravans and boats, etc. Alternatively, Nissan's TD42 motor is considered a very reliable motor despite some overheating issues, but it is common to search for the 4.2 motor on classifieds and find the marketplace empty. Simple supply and demand dictates the TD42 is not plentiful and it's not affordable. The TD42 is a thirstier motor too, and my TD42 in a GQ chassis was happy to suck down 18 to 19 litres per 100 around town and about 14 to 16 litres on the highway, unladen. Some believe if you own a 4x4 then throw away any thoughts about nice fuel consumption figures, but Nissan was forced to revise their engine lineup in the Patrols when the TD42 failed emission testing in some countries. Nissan's answer to the market was the next generation ZD30, a 4-cylinder turbo diesel motor. There's actually been quite a few variations to the motor over the years, but they sported roughly 10 to 25 kilowatts more than the RD28, depending on if the ZD30 is direct injected or common rail, of course. The ZD30 motor in the GU Patrol was a top seller and it was far more affordable than some of its closest competitors, and I think this contributes to some of the stigma surrounding the ZD30 being an engine that blows up. The user age group, because it's more affordable, is generally younger, their interaction in online discussions is greater, and probably because there was in fact several significant flaws with the engine. People often associate large engine repair bills with their engine blowing up, or what has been labelled grenading, which has given the ZD30 its nickname, the grenade motor. And these large repair bills are synonymous with some of the things that can go wrong with the ZD30. A top-end repair, anything from the head gasket up, could set you back $6 to $8 depending on who's doing the work and what's involved. Move down to the block and cylinder area and now you're looking at a complete rebuild or replacement motor. If you consider you should be changing the $5 diesel pump during a rebuild, it's no wonder people go for a full engine swap or a Brunswick or LS engine conversion and simply label something like a head recon due to a blown head gasket a grenade of the engine. But very few ZD30s actually blow up. You hardly ever hear of bent or flying pistons and holes in the block. But it could seem that way, I guess, when you hear about the 15 to 25 grand bills from the dealership under warranty, I guess. Inadequate oil flow to the third and fourth pistons in the earlier engines caused the piston to overheat and in some cases melt. Nissan modified the oil passages, sump, oil viscosity specs, dipsticks, etc. to combat the oil flow issues. If you're looking to buy a GU, I'd suggest getting a Series 3 or later, which don't seem to have any issues in this respect. Boost pressure is a second thing to consider with the ZD. 18 pounds of boost is pretty high for factory standards, but it is manageable. The problem though is if you have any leaks in the intercooler or actuator piping, things like that, then it can spike up to 25 or 30 psi. The boost is ECU controlled, but it's slow to react. Any leaks lead to spikes in pressure, and the ECU is too slow to react by changing the vacuum control, and before you know it, something blows up. If you're buying a ZD30, ask the owner if they've ever had intercooler piping blow off. If they have, guarantee there's a boost leak somewhere. Also, when test driving, it's common for aftermarket boost gauges to be installed. A good test is cruise along at pre-boost speeds in second gear, then give it some berries, and if the boost gauge spikes to 25 to 30 psi before settling back down to 18, then it tells you might have a boost leak. Also, the intercooler having oil leaks around the tank ends is a pretty common indicator of overboost, and it's also an indicator some other issues with the ZD30, mainly oil getting into the intake system. To fix control boost pressures, you need to fit a doors valve. Instead of giving boost pressure profile that rises sharply, the doors valve gives a more linear boost profile that rises as revs rise until it hits max boost set by the valve. This manual boost control system helps manage the exhaust and cylinder temps. Like all turboed motors, crankcase pressure is a byproduct of the high boost levels. In the ZD30, it can push oil past the crankcase baffles and mist the oil into the intake. And the oil in the intake is a problem for a couple of reasons. Number one is that oil mist can make its way to the mass airflow sensor, or MAF. The ECU reads air to fuel ratio by using the MAF, then it adjusts air to fuel ratio accordingly. But if the MAF is coated in oil, the adjustment's incorrect, and the ECU's resulting adjustment causes poor performance and higher than usual engine temps and exhaust gas temps. Cleaning or replacing the MAF is the first step, and then installing an exhaust gas temp gauge, or EGT gauge, is the second step to ensuring you can monitor the combustion side of things. Momentary maximum EGT shouldn't exceed 550 Celsius or 1040 Fahrenheit, but EGT will be significantly reduced if you fit a 3-inch aftermarket exhaust. The long-term solution to fixed oil in the intake is a catch can that can drain out each time you service it. The easiest way to maintain the intake if you already own a GU Patrol is get the intake foam cleaned. A mobile mechanic can do this for about $150 to $250 depending on if they use one bottle of intake cleaner or two. But after the foam clean of the intercooler and manifold is done, you fit an oil catch can. That way you know the intake will contain heaps less oil, since it'll get caught in the can instead of getting fed into the intake, which eventually goes over the valves and into the combustion chambers, where the pistons can superheat, melt out, or cause head gasket damage. Carbon buildup on the intake manifold and valves is super common on the ZD30. Not only is misty oil getting fed into the intake if no catch can's installed, but recirculating gas from the exhaust is also being fed back into the manifold, and of course, diesel particulate and carbon builds up on the inside of the intake. If you're unlucky, pistons number 3 or 4 get a carbon buildup on top of the piston, and it causes heat concentration and eventually piston or head gasket failure. This isn't a thing common to ZD30, but all diesel engines with EGR, which is more or less all modern diesels. But luckily the fix is simple. You just block the EGR with a blanking plate. They're less than $20 off eBay and stop the spent diesel gases come back into the intake. They sell two types, one's with miniature holes in it and one that's completely solid. The one with mini holes in it is to stop the ECU from causing a fault code, but I've used the solid blanking plate before, the one without the holes in it, and you never get a code anyway. Keep in mind this is for off-road use only, of course, wink wink. Blanking the EGR is illegal from environmental and emission laws point of view. So let's go through the fixes. Pretty much it helps to get an aftermarket intercooler. Let's face it, they look sick, they're cheap, and they have welded tanks so boost can't leak. There's an 80% chance your factory one leaks, so it's cheap insurance. As a side effect, they won't be oiled up on the inside like the factory one too. The number 2 fix is doors valve and boost gauge. So you fit one to smooth out the boost delivery in a linear fashion and prevent overboosting. The gauge lets you keep an eye on overboost and general boost levels. Fix number 3 and 4 is the 3-inch exhaust and EGT gauge. Boost pressures mean some oil in the intake is inevitable. EGT gauge means you can keep an eye on the spent combustion temps, and the 3-inch exhaust, in particular the larger dump pipe, will drop these temps naturally. This is more important if you tow, since you'll have your foot down more, leading to higher than average EGTs for longer periods of time. Number 5 is block the exhaust gas recirculation system. It stops spent exhaust gas and therefore carbon particles going back into the intake and building up. As a side effect, less spent exhaust in the intake significantly reduces the intake manifold temp and allows more clean air from the air cleaner being delivered too, which means more power. Lastly, The seventh fix is the oil catch can with the drain valve. So to me, this is a standard mod to any turbo diesel, not just the Patrols. It removes oil from air going into the intake, leading to longer engine life and minimising the chance of piston overheating or oil getting into the MAF sensor and causing you costly repairs. In summary, the GU Patrol is an off-road weapon. Not many, if any, other 4Bs have the same combination of bulletproof driveline, interior space, big suspension flex, parts availability, and most importantly, affordability for your average family. Despite the tendencies for manufacturers to move towards independent suspension, the GU is a solid axle beast for which touring and weekend warrior accessories are endless. The ZD30 can happily power the heavy Patrol chassis in harsh Aussie conditions, but it does indeed have several contributing issues that lead it perhaps to have an overly represented and unduly labelled the grenade engine. With the 7 mods of oil catch can, EGR blanking plate, 3-inch exhaust, EGT and boost gauges, a doors valve and an intercooler, it'll generally cost you under $2,000, and you'll have a turbo diesel engine capable of good mileage, good lifespan and reliability. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe.